Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Gary Muirhead was here before the show started, and just as the show began, Mark Writing just pitched up as well. Monologue's #1 over on Instagram is here. Work Project is here as well. Project. And Joel Rodriguez also over on Instagram. Got another packed show for you today. I'm going to let a few more people arrive because I want to show you the thing. Not to brag, but because it's a thing. Mercer Johnston just joined us as well. Good morning to you. Ken Hatter has arrived, safe and sound from Welsh Wales. Morning, Ken. Good of you to join us as well. Day or two ago, I can't remember who it was. I think it may have even been in the WhatsApp group. People were talking about the ability to build a website these days with very little coding knowledge or coding experience and stuff like that. And it was one of those things that played around in the back of my head. I use AI quite a bit for stuff. And that, as I say, that stuck in my head. And I was sat here last night. I mentioned the other day, I've bought myself a kettlebell to try and get myself a little bit fitter because I'm not fit at all. And I wanted some means of tracking my progress with said kettlebell. I've got an Apple Watch and it's got lots of different systems on there to track running and swimming and yoga and Lord alone knows what else. There's nothing on there for kettlebells. So, as I say, having been talking about the ability to build a website or to build an app using nothing more than AI and basically just talking to it, I decided to have a go. And I did it. You see that? I don't know how well you can see it. Hang on a minute. Let me just get to the same place. Yeah, there we are. I told it the color scheme. I told it what I needed it to do. I don't know why it's not showing the full public thing, but basically I can now track the various different types of exercises that I do and various other bits and pieces, and it works an absolute treat. Have I got the right one, I wonder? No, I haven't. I haven't got the right one. Bear with me a second. Let me take that away and let me get rid of that and let me add the right version of it so you can see it properly. It's that one. No, still not working particularly well. Hang on a sec. I can get rid of it now. There you are. So that's what it looks like. Down the left is my instructions on what I needed it to do, but the actual thing itself is completely workable. Completely workable. So I can choose, kettlebell swings or deadlifts or whatever it might be, and I can record the weight that I was swinging, the number of reps that I did, the number of sets that I did, and it will record all of that, and it will give me a chart over a period of time to show me how I'm getting on. Not only that, it actually gives me, and I didn't even ask for this bit, it gives me daily tips, suggestions, and encouragement, and yeah. And I'll tell you, completely honestly, as I say, I'm not showing that because I'm trying to show off. I'm telling you because I literally said, I've got a kettlebell. I want to be able to track my progress. Create me an app. And it did. And it took me about less than a minute, 40 seconds maybe. Job done. Tristan Mays has just arrived. Good morning to the Crane legend himself. Good morning, Mark, you young legend. Hope you and everyone is okay. Well, I'm fighting fit. I'll be fighting even fitter once I get the kettlebell swinging about the place. Carrying a bit of an injury at the moment, so I don't want to start and hurt myself, basically. So, but Jim Turner is here as well. So good morning to you, Jim. So just if anyone wants to know, if there's something that you would like to build, I don't know what it would be. I don't know, tracking. Yeah, it doesn't even need to be tracking, but if there's something you want to keep an eye on, or if there's something you would like to fan, it's Google Gemini. It's free, completely free. You just punch in what you want, and it comes up, does all the coding for you, comes up with the goods. It's I'm constantly astonished by AI, but even more astonished by that. Gary Muirhead saying, I wonder what time will Chris will rock up. Yeah, any time between now and about 11, I would guess. Yeah. Ken says, that's unbelievable, really, from someone who used to write BASIC on a BBC microcomputer. Mad. Yeah, when I first did computer studies at school, it was all done by punch cards, and we didn't actually have a terminal at our school. If we wanted a computer terminal, we had to go to a nearby college, but we had punch cards, so we could code it to do certain things. One of these days, I'll tell you the full story, but one of the exercises we were given when I was about 14 years old, I guess, was to program kind of an accountancy system for a supermarket. And the nearest supermarket to my school when I was at high school was Safeway. And we coded, me and a partner coded the entire thing so that it could record individual transactions and stuff like that. And it all worked perfectly well, apart from one thing. And it lives with me to this day. As I say, we programmed the entire thing, but we misspelled Safeway, and instead of the Y, we had an H. So our entire project, which had taken us months and months and months to produce, the supermarket was called Safwa. And even now, when I see a Safeway supermarket, to me, it is a Safwa. Chris Ford arrived earlier than we expected. Morning, spanners and oil filters, the joys of plant ownership. You've had one of those mornings, have you? Gary says, good morning, Chris. Mark was only killing time till you arrived. Listen, that's pretty much how this show works. I tread water until I've got a decent amount of people, and then I press the go button. You're absolutely right. The lorries are better than Greenwich Mean Time for 10 o'clock. Yeah, that's... Listen, my phone call or my phone rings, and even now, do you know what really does my nut in? People phone you up at like I don't know 2 minutes to 10, and I'll say sorry, I can't speak. I'm doing a live stream in 2 minutes, and they go, "Oh, of course you are." Nearly 6. Well, it is 6 fucking years. Surely by now you should know these things. Will your app be available in the App Store? You can do that. Yeah, you can do that. You can basically, it would need hosting and everything else. But no, this is purely for me. Although I can share it. So if anybody else fancies waving a kettlebell about the place and keeping track of their progress, I can share it. It does exist. I'm planning to actually kick off on Saturday this week, but I've got a bit of a twinge in my chest. I lifted something the other day, which I didn't do particularly well, and it's kind of pulled a bit of a muscle in my chest. I want that to die down, because the last thing I want to do is start waving a kettlebell about the place, hurt myself, and have to put it back even further. So I'm going to let that subside, and then I'm going to kick off, and I'll be tracking it with the app What I Built. Yeah. I mean, I say I'm going to be tracking my progress. There's no guarantee there will be progress. I might still end up, a fat flabby bugger like I am already. But we shall see. We shall see. And maybe every once in a while I'll check into the app and show you my progress, if such a thing happens. Anyway, people, we've got a really strange but really good film to kick things off today. If I tell you the film is about hydraulic rams, doesn't sound exciting, does it? Wait till you see it. Let's get on with the show. I'll get to the show in just a moment, but I've just got this from Jim. I'm only just getting into AI. It's a double-edged sword. It's great, but can be very frustrating when I'm trying to explain what I'm trying to make it do. I've got a couple of my machine designs created through AI, so now the crap in my head is now transferable to other people. I don't know what system you're using, Jim, but one of the things, I can only do it during the day. I'm sat there. I'm sat there on a laptop basically the entire evening. I don't watch TV. I'm just sat there on a laptop, either watching YouTube videos, teaching myself something, playing around with AI and that kind of thing. When I'm in that environment, I feel very uncomfortable, despite the fact that it's my wife and family. I feel very uncomfortable talking to my computer. It makes me look like a bit of a tit. But during the day, I often sit here and flesh out ideas for articles or other stuff. I personally, I was using ChatGPT, which is okay, but Google Gemini is a million times better. It really is a million times better. And I have a proper to and fro to the point where I started to flesh out today's morning monologue. Having chatted to the ChatGPT, it kind of went off in a completely different tangent. If you haven't tried Google Gemini, give it a bash. Free, as I say. Will you be digging out the fishing gear soon and heading out to the waterside? I'm a bit of a traditionalist with you, to be honest with you, Gary. I realise that private fisheries no longer really follow the rules and regulations, but I was always raised, I was raised by my father to abide by close seasons. So we are currently in the close season. There is a close season between the 16th of March, 16th of June. So no, I will be going in June. Trust me. Quite possibly the 16th of June, I will be out with a fishing rod in my hand. But as it stands at the moment, no, I'm holding back. Ken says, I love a bit of friction welding. Well, I was going to say, don't we all? I'm not even entirely sure what I know what friction welding is. So let's tell you what's coming up, shall I? It is Thursday, the 16th of April. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. Yeah, you know the rest. In today's show, battling the elements with Caterpillar Hydraulics. Kobelco lifts the lid on its new reduced radius excavator. XCMG's latest midi excavator rolls off the line, and the industry unites. It unites with the Open S platform among quick coupler and tilt rotator manufacturers. That comes from Conexpo. We shot it. Think you'll like it. Plus, in today's edition of Mark's Morning Monologue, the one that I sent back and forth with the AI, it's called Boots and Suits. Boots and Suits, that's what it's all about. Wanda Negron is here from now. What flag is that, Wanda? When I looked at it very, very small, I thought that must be an American flag. That's not an American flag. Wanda, please tell me where you're watching from. I'm using two AIs at the moment. One is Dollar, I think. Don't know that one. But Google Gemini, it does everything. And you can use different tools. And one of the tools that I use quite regularly, which is what created that app, by the way, is called Canvas. And it basically, it's kind of a vibe coding thing. So you come up with an idea, tell it what you want, and it will go away and do it. Well, Wanda, my apologies for not identifying your flag. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not entirely sure what time it is where you are, but good morning to you and everyone in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, fantastic stuff, awesome. Jim, Gary says, Jim, I think you opened up your mind to AI. It'll probably have a meltdown with all the amazing stuff you've got stored up there. Yeah, having said that, I mean, I'm waiting delivery of a voice recorder at the moment that kind of magnetizes to the back of your phone. Not only does it will allow me to record phone calls, it'll allow me to record meetings, interviews, and all of that good stuff, but it will then feed it into an AI which will log all of that for me. So if in a month, 6 months, 12 months time, I can say to it, what was Jim going on about with that AI that he was using? It'll go and find it, and it will also find other references to it as well. AI. Not entirely comfortable with it, but it is the future, and I'm all for it. Let's have a look. Yeah, we're talking hydraulics in a moment, but let's get this bit of Caterpillar out of the way before I show you the really sexy stuff. Gary says, how do the Meta glasses work when in Las Vegas? Do you know, I don't even know if he wore them. I don't even know if he wore them. I mean, we were off in different directions for a fair part of the time. I don't know if he wore them at all. I'll check with him when I see him. Jim says, I'll give Gemini a try, but I'll stick to timing my suggestion as those voice commands seem to struggle. I agree, or I would have agreed until I got to Gemini. Its ability to understand my South London accent is mind-blowing. And one of the things that I find interesting, you can see the words coming up on the screen while you're saying them, and it kind of understands you phonetically. So it picks up on the fact that I've said a word that it doesn't necessarily understand. And as you're speaking, it's going, oh, I think he meant that. And it's actually correcting you as you go along. Awesome. Now, to start a show of this nature, talking about hydraulic rams seems like a bit of a weird choice. I prefer the sexy stuff up front. But I think you'll agree, this is one hell of a film, one hell of an application, and one hell of a set of rams. Take a look at this.
Compass has a really harsh environment. Typically, we get 1,500 to 2,000 hours before the chrome rods will start pitting, which develops issues with putting contaminations into the hydraulic system.
Every 16 to 2,000 hours, we were pulling the rods off, having them reconditioned. Utilization rate was low, having downtime and contamination enter the system. And our biggest concern with that is if the flaking gets back into the components, we could have a failure. So we elected to wait for the release of the ultralights.
Ultralife rods at Compass Minerals have been a game changer for their operations.
Being able to efficiently have a reliable rod, we're able to focus on other pieces of equipment to be able to maintain better.
So D6 was the first candidate, and that's where we felt the best proven area of the ultralights would be.
Since that time, we've not had a failure on the D6 rods, and that's why we started installing them on the 745 haul trucks as well.
We would like to incorporate ultralife rods on the whole fleet. The ultralife coating doesn't pit, it doesn't corrode, it's very reliable. We feel that they'll outlive the machine life. Currently we have a set of rods that are on their second machine life, and they're showing no wear, no corrosion.
There's no visible degradation of the ultralife rod. 10,000 plus hours on the machines and still look brand new.
The rod itself is built to withstand our environment. There's been a lot of engineering around it to help extend the life of the rod, extend the life and uptime and the runtime of the piece of equipment.
The only thing we've ever had to do is basic seal replacement. The rods are still the original rods.
They don't pit, they don't scar, they're very strong, durable. They allow you to direct your time to other issues that arise.
The longevity of these rods has helped us improve the uptime. It's not shiny, it's not classy, it looks like it's built tough. You can see the value in it, you can see the durability in it, but also by the usage of it, you can tell that it's built to last.
What an application. And how tough is that on machines? I've never been to anywhere quite like that, but I did go to English China Clays down in Cornwall many, many years ago. And they were talking about the way that the China clay basically acts like a grinding paste and just literally eats away at bucket teeth and bucket edges and that kind of thing. Same thing. I don't know what the price premium is on those ultra rams that Caterpillar are offering there. I'm sure there is a price premium, but they are a bit special, I would say. Anybody got any experience with working in salty environments and that kind of thing? Love to hear from you. While you're mulling that over, let's have a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, Ken is saying salt is a killer. Yeah, I remember my dad saying that. What I've mentioned before, I bought myself, when I first passed my driving test, I bought myself a VW Beetle because my dad had one when I was a kid. But the first one I actually found was based, it was owned by a guy down in Brighton. And I remember my dad saying, you don't want one from the coast. The salt will have got to that. And is it true? One of these things that I'm never entirely sure if it's a fact or a fiction that people living on the coast pay more for their car insurance because of that salt erosion, corrosion, something ocean. I don't know. Again, if you know better, please let me know. Kobelco have got a new short radius excavator out, and we have a man here who's about to take you around it.
Standing behind me is our short radius SK165, engineered for high performance in mountainous and forest environments. With the 165, you get large ground clearance for challenging terrain. The undercarriage is built for reliability, featuring double support, upper rollers, and 3 track guides per side for optimal track alignment and stability. A dozer blade is available with different widths based on shoe size. For component protection, the machine has dedicated guards and a mesh screen designed to prevent branches and leaves from entering critical areas. Other important point, the short radius design allows you to work in narrow spaces. The SK165 SRLC-7 is the machine designed for special applications.
There you are, designed for special applications. Going back to all things salty. I'm not suggesting Chris Ford is salty in any way, but he does have something to say. He says, yep, used to ramp road salt for the council. The salt used to eat the machines. You could never get rid of it. Never again, he says. Yeah, that's much the same experience with the guys down at English China Clays. Also, once had a machine that had been on the beach defence work. Same problem. Yeah, absolutely. Beach defence is tough on machines. If it's metal and it gets exposed to salt, wave it goodbye. Yes, steelworks is a killer for a machine. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder what the toughest is. I wonder what the toughest application actually is. Some of those machines that are working in slag and that kind of thing, that looks tough, certainly. I wonder if salt is harsher than that. If anyone else has got a better application for destroying machines, please let me know. We've just had a new excavator from Kobelco. We've got a new one coming from XCMG immediately after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Mr. Norton has just arrived. I'm speaking to him, but as you can tell, I'm not entirely sure if that's going to work. He says, good morning all. Having to lip read this morning as audio's buggered. I hope that wasn't swearing. My apologies. Chris Ford says, no Dan tonight. No, I'm not seeing Dan at all. Jim, going back to harsh applications. There's a cat fitter in our Plant Club WhatsApp group that goes into a sugar warehouse and dock. He says the sugar is corrosive and the sugar dust kills alternators and starter motors very quickly. Not as sweet as it sounds. Clay should be okay, really. They use it as a lubricant in certain applications. They do, but English China Clay, it's got that, I can't even think of it does have that corrosive, like a grinding paste. That's the only way I can describe it. Jim also says it also makes the sprocket segments come loose, so they had to tack weld them on. Surely, there must come a point where you look at it and you go, you know what, that's just not suitable for a machine at all. Yeah. If anyone knows what Dan's up to today, please let me know. Right. XCMG got a new MIDI excavator out, and it looks like this. I wonder when we'll get to see one of those here in the UK. I wonder if we'll get to see one of those in the UK, but that is the brand new MIDI excavator from the fine folks at XCMG. We're talking industry uniting in just a moment. It sometimes feels like this industry is going off in a 1,000 different directions at once. We're coming up with electric machines that not everybody likes, but they all have different infrastructures, all have different charging protocols, and so on down the line. We have in-cab telematics, but sometimes they don't talk to that machine, and that machine doesn't talk to that machine. We have GPS systems that are applicable to that type of machine or that type of environment, but not to that. With all of that being said, it is quite nice to report on the industry, or most of the industry, coming together behind a single cause. That cause is the OpenS platform. The likes of Indeco, Kinsoffer, Steel Wrist, those that make attachments and those that make the quick couplers and the tilt rotators that serve them, have got themselves together to form the OpenS Alliance. During ConExpo, a lot of them were represented there, and we went round. We were working with the OpenS Alliance, and we went round and filmed some of the OpenS members in action. This is that film. Yeah, if you're watching closely, you may have seen our friends Steve Williamson and Ed Butler, but making a Hitchcockian style cameo appearance in the background of that. Yeah, that's the OpenS Alliance. Self-explanatory. All of those people, or almost all of the people involved in S-type couplers, have formed an alliance, basically to not to share information as such. They're all off designing their own things in their own way, but trying to come up with a standard format that will benefit customers. That's the basic idea. OpenS. Look it up online, open-s. Tell you all you need to know. Anywho, people, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back to talk boots and suits after this. In a sane world, no child would go to bed hungry. Everyone would have a safe place to call home. Nations would no longer be at war to decide whose imaginary friend was the best. And the gulf between the haves and the have-nots would have long since been bridged. Sadly, we don't live in a sane world. In fact, with each passing day, it feels like we're living in an asylum in which we've surrendered the keys to the lunatics. We have global leaders depicting themselves as the Son of God, wars being fought over a commodity that is rapidly falling out of fashion, and billionaires looking to colonize other planets by plundering this one. Charity bosses earn hefty salaries while children go without. Pharmaceutical companies charge fortunes for life-saving drugs while nurses can barely feed themselves. And politicians hand down rules that force the elderly to choose between eating and heating. And here in the world of demolition and construction, this crazy imbalance is played out on sites up and down the country on a day-to-day basis. In fact, in this sector, the closer you get to the muck and bullets, the harder the industry's reality bites. This industry is a ladder where everyone is climbing over each other. Yet those at the top seemingly haven't a clue what's really happening at the bottom. The developer has the cash and the vision, but wouldn't know which end of a shovel to hold. So they hire a tier 1 contractor who promptly carves the job into a dozen pieces and throws those pieces out to the specialists. It's a neat trick. The money stays at the top, but the risk is heavy enough to sink straight to the bottom. We've built a system where money flows up while danger flows down. The tier 1 contractors sit at the top of the food chain, fat on healthy margins and protected by a phalanx of lawyers. But as the project gets sliced up, the margins slowly vanish. By the time a package reaches the men and women on site, the financial banquet enjoyed by those at the top has been whittled down to a morsel that is barely enough to keep them alive. For a tier 1 firm, a delay is an inconvenience. For a subby, it's a direct hit to the jugular. The developer risks a credit rating, the steel erector risks his life. We've created a system where the most essential and dangerous tasks are rewarded with the smallest crumbs and the biggest liability. And if the money is a pyramid, competence is an inverted joke. We've reached a stage where the more vital your job, the more you have to prove yourself to people who couldn't do your job. We've reached a stage where the more vital your job, the more you have to prove yourself to people who couldn't do your day's work if their pension depended on it. A digger driver needs a plastic competence card just to get on site. And that card is bestowed upon him by someone who's likely never spent 8 hours in a machine. It's a culture of box ticking where a person who's read a manual is allowed to lecture the person who has lived the experience. A demolition firm is hired for its ability to demolish. Yet they're immediately met by a site manager with zero demolition experience or expertise who feels entitled to dictate the schedule and the methodology. This is the professional paradox. They hire you because they lack your skills, then spend the whole contract pretending they know best. If they actually knew how to do the job, they wouldn't have to sub it out in the first place. And this disconnect isn't just a site problem, it's a national one. We're being governed by people who think they know how the real world works. The industry is buried under a landslide of legislation and safety mandates written by civil servants who moved from private school to a policy think tank without ever getting dust on their loafers. They sit in air-conditioned offices, drafting laws on how a man should hold a shovel, despite never having felt the weight of one themselves. This is the final form of competence inversion. It's no longer just a site manager questioning your method. It's a legislator in Westminster deciding the legality of your trade. When people with zero practical experience regulate those with 30 years of it, you don't get safety, you just get red tape and bureaucracy. The gap between the suits and the boots has become a chasm. For construction and demolition to actually function, we need to stop pretending a degree in management is actually a substitute for genuine lived experience. The money needs to follow the risk, and competence needs to be judged by results, not multiple choice tests designed by a committee of non-practitioners. And until we admit that the person doing the work is the actual expert, the industry will remain upside down. Money and rules at the top, skill and risk at the bottom, and a whole lot of misunderstanding in between. There you are. There is my morning monologue for Thursday, the 16th of April, which if I had my voice recorder, I would be able to summon in an instant, but it hasn't arrived from America yet. I'm holding out hope for it. So yes, there you are. That's the world turned upside down. Has anyone seen the Donald Trump as Jesus, or as he likes to say, as a doctor? Yeah. because you know how many doctors cure the sick with a glowing orb in their hand while wearing flowing robes. What the hell's going on up there? What the hell is going on up there? I'm going to talk about America very quickly, but I'm going to talk about America knowing full well that we are every bit as guilty. If you spent any time in America, or you've spoken to Americans, or frankly, if you've watched American TV, you will know about their belief in the Constitution and the Republic and we the people and everything else. And for 250 years, that's been absolutely dandy. It's kind of kept them in check. It's kept the state and the church and the people and everything. It's kept everything in balance, and everything's been tickety-boo until one bloke came along and went, bollocks on that, I'm going to do my own thing. At which point, the whole thing has been exposed for possibly the lie that it always was. It was a fiction. That's why Donald Trump, multiple felonies, multiple accusations of sexual misconduct, blah, 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 clearly grifting the entire time he's been in the White House. Doesn't matter, he gets away with it. And is that any different here? Is that any different here? Sadly, it isn't. It really isn't. Let's have a look. Somebody's just popped into the chat here. Andy Thornton. Good morning, Andy. Now, there's a mental health case. I do wonder about that. I come at this from a biased position. I don't like the man or anything that he stands for. So I am very anti Mr. Trump. Don't think we should have anything to do with him. Certainly don't think that King Charles should be going for a royal visit to pay him a visit in the White House. So that's where I come from. But with each passing day, I wonder if, in fact, he has got more than an ego problem. He might actually have a mental problem. He's 79 years old. If he were my grandfather, I don't think I'd allow him to have the car keys. I'm fairly sure Donald Trump doesn't drive himself anywhere anyway, but I think you'd be at the point where you and your family members would be saying, I think we need to have a bit of a chat about Granddad. All is not well. There are multiple bats loose. There's something going on there. And yet, not only do people carry on supporting him, Congress, the Senate just seem to, it's just Donald being Donald. Donald being the Antichrist is what it is. And yet here in the UK, we have exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Not to quite such a ridiculous degree, but it does feel like the disconnect between, and obviously I write everything through the lens of demolition and construction, but the disconnect between the people of America and their government, the difference or the disparity between us here in the UK and those in Westminster seems to have got a whole lot wider, to the point where I'm not entirely sure that those in the Westminster bubble or the White House bubble are actually aware of real world problems. In America, you've got Trump and his minions saying, this problem in the Strait of Hormuz, we've won the war, they've surrendered, we massive victory, and the price of fuel has not gone up. And then you've got people on the ground level in America who can't afford to put petrol in their car because the price has gone up so much. And they will go on to Fox News, the politicians will go on to Fox News and say, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad because your fuel, my friend, is subsidized. You've got a driver, and it's your driver that's putting the gas in your tank. It's not you doing it. You probably don't know the price of a gallon of petrol or diesel. You don't know the price of a loaf of bread. You don't know the price of a dozen eggs. You don't know the price of putting food on the table for a family of 4. You have no understanding of it whatsoever. And as I say, I'm saying that all of this looking to America. We're exactly the same here. You know, my in-laws, there's only one of them left now, but my in-laws had their heating allowance taken away, whatever it was, a year ago. Now, not the end of the world. And, you know, they have family. So she has family. My mother-in-law has family around her, both my wife and her sister. She has support and everything else. But they have made a policy decision to take away the heating allowance from an elderly person who suffers from MS. At the same time, they're giving themselves a pay rise. At the same time, we're spending money on defence and so on. It's a policy decision. Andy Thornton says, declaring a legal war for what is really about grabbing oil and misdirection from Epstein shows no empathy for people. That's just sociopathy. Do I have to add allegedly? You don't have to add allegedly. I mean, we all know what it's about. But I do feel like the Trump regime administration has got itself into a bit of a pickle now. I do think, I firmly believe that the whole thing about Iran, yes, they want the oil. Yes, they want control of the Strait of Hormuz and all that goes with it. But I do think, you know, genuinely, heart of hearts, I do believe that war was started primarily to distract from the Epstein files and Donald Trump's position in them. But the war in Iran has been such a bugger's muddle that we're now back to, we had the First Lady, who always has a look on her face like she can't remember somebody's name or their phone number. She does a lot of that. But yeah, she then comes out in the midst of a war to talk about the Epstein files. So we had a war in Iran started to distract from the Epstein files, and then the First Lady coming out to talk about the Epstein files, presumably to distract from the war in Iran. And we go round and round in circles. And yet nobody does anything about it. And 25th Amendment, which allows the president to be removed. But who ultimately gets to decide whether or not the 25th Amendment is actually set in place? The vice president, the J.D. Vance, Crawley bumhole, who is loyal to Donald Trump to the point of lunacy. So this is a bad guy. And he's clearly barking mad. We need to take him out. Who do you ask about it? Oh, his best mate. The whole system falls down. They don't need the oil. All they need is a change in share prices and forced inflation. Well, and I'm not going to get into politics because I know a few people are planning to vote for reform in the coming election, whenever that is, a year or two's time. Have a look at some of the background to Mr. Farage and his investments of late. Seems oddly similar to what's happening in the States. They have to keep creating debt and inflation, climate change, COVID, wars. I kind of go with you on the underlying thing. Not entirely sure that COVID was necessarily created. And I'm a believer that climate change is a thing. So take that or leave it. We had a weird thing last night. This has got virtually nothing to do with what we're talking about here. But last weekend, we have. I live in Epsom in Surrey. Very low crime rate in these parts. Very low. We have the odd person getting arrested because they've got a knife on them, and there's a bit of shoplifting goes on. But by and large, pretty safe. Anyway, there's a nightclub in Epsom. A young girl. I say young girl, 20 years old, came out of there on, I think it was Saturday night, 2:00 in the morning, and was raped. 4 guys involved. Don't know if all 4 were involved in the rape, but certainly 4 men were involved. And weirdly, and I've never really experienced this before. I've seen it in the States where something happens, and like the Rodney King thing back in was it 92 or thereabouts. We had a bunch of people turn up at the at Epsom demanded to be told who the suspects were. Now, obviously, that's not how the legal system works, innocent till proven guilty and all of that. Within a couple of hours last night, we had people coming in by train from far and wide, literally from far and wide, and staging a protest of hundreds of people in Epsom. There was racist, I was going to say overtones. It was very racist. They've convinced themselves that the perpetrators of this rape were almost certainly brown, almost certainly Muslim. No evidence to support any of that, but they've decided that this was the case, and they demanded justice. Which, listen, I think the fact that a 20-year-old girl has been through such a horrific ordeal is awful, absolutely awful. And I too believe she should receive justice. Not entirely sure mob justice is the way forward. But here is, just to give you an idea of how committed to the notion of justice these people were. Hundreds and hundreds of people congregated in Epsom Town Centre yesterday to demand justice. And while they were demanding justice, they were singing Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. Because nothing says we must have justice quite like a 1970s pop song, popular among football fans. What's that all about? Andy Thornton says, sounds like a Bond movie. You don't need to steal the gold from Fort Knox, just make it unusable, upping the value of your... yes, the plot of Goldfinger and Odd Job. Do you remember Odd Job with his hat? I'd like a hat like that. Not necessarily to throw at people, I just want a bowler hat. Jim Turner says, climate change is definitely a thing. The thing is called a cycle. The type of cycle that takes thousands of years. That's why they saw a pattern and created a bandwagon for people to jump on. But then, isn't that what... I've said this before, and maybe one of these days when I get really bored, I may actually get around to do it. I have this notion of creating a website called Small Politics, because I tend to try to boil down anything political into bite-sized pieces. Things, I'm not the brightest, and I'd like to boil it down into how I see it. And the example I always give is something like immigration. Coming over here in their small boats, demanding to be, throwing themselves on the mercy of the state. My take on that is, if somebody knocked on my door now, let's say it's a brown woman, doesn't have to be brown, but just has to, let's just say it's a brown woman, knocks on the door and says, my husband is beating me, help. My reaction as a regular bloke, nothing to do with race, creed, colour, or anything else, my reaction would be, come in, love, have a cup of tea, we'll phone the police and we'll get you sorted out. And so when people are fleeing from Syria or wherever it might be, and they're making the treacherous journey across the channel, my belief is the same. If they're doing that, if they're risking their lives, must be something up. By and large, I realise there'll be exceptions. And I would say the same with things like climate change. And the reason I'm thinking about this, I don't know what the age is, but I remember when I was younger, working for myself. I don't mean in employment terms. I mean, when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're working to give yourself a bigger house or a better car or a more fancy holiday or to put money in the bank or whatever it might be. There comes a time, with me, it was probably mid-50s, where I started to think, actually, I'm not really building this for me. I'm basically building a fund to pass on to my kids to give them a leg up and then possibly give their grandchildren or my grandchildren a leg up as well. And I would say exactly the same about climate change. What we do today doesn't really impact us. Bit like Brexit. I had a major issue with my parents and my in-laws voting for Brexit, even though 3 of the 4 of them aren't actually around anymore. They voted, they pulled the pin out, threw the grenade, and then died, and left the rest of us to pick up the pieces. I believe exactly the same with climate change. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but I'm of an age now where I don't actually care about that. If something I can do today might make the planet a bit more livable for my kids, my grandkids, or even my great-grandkids, if I ever get to meet them, regardless if I get to meet them, then surely the onus is upon me to do that. We should adapt to climate change, not try and fight it. Mick Norton says, who remembers the epic protest songs of the 1960s? Yeah. Mr. Dylan and his ilk. Also, the 80s as well. It's taken a bit of a strange left turn, but the hip-hop music of the 80s, songs like The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, talking about poverty and racial inequality in America. It was, well, let's be absolutely honest, a lot of the 1960s protest songs were basically an updated blues. Things are shit, I'm going to sing about it. I think as I say, the hip hop culture of the 1980s was exactly the same. Things are shit. The police don't like us and they're beating us up. They're shooting us. I can't get a job because of the color of my skin and so on down the line. Exactly the same thing. Now, put out an AI tune. That'll do. If you wore a bowler hat, you'd look like Mr. Ben. I'd love to look like Mr. Ben. Do you know how many episodes there were of Mr. Ben? I remember it being a staple of my childhood. 13 episodes is all they filmed. 13. And Billy Bragg, yes, absolutely. I've seen Billy Bragg a few times. And I know a mate of mine, Nick, who's a huge Billy Bragg fan, got to meet him at Glastonbury about 2 or 3 years ago and was so overwhelmed by meeting Billy Bragg that he just cried. Yeah. I'm sure I missed something there. Yeah, going back to that, greatest protest song. Personally, Killing in the Name of by Rage Against the Machine. That would be my personal favourite, which I realise is not from the 1960s, but yeah. War, what is it good for? Edwin Starr, possibly? I think it's Edwin Starr. Any others? Any other takers on that? Between the Wars, Billy Bragg? Any more for any more? Anyway, people, that will do us. I'm going to go and, I'm going to go away and play with the AI a little bit more. Make sure my new app, an app with an audience of 1. Oh, fortunate son, Clearwater Revival. Absolutely. What a banger that is. I might actually go and do some 60s music while I'm playing with this AI in a moment. I'll be back tomorrow for the final time this week for Get More of the Same. Tune in if you have the time and the inclination. Hoping Dan Cullen's okay. It's rare for him to miss a show. I'm sure he's just a bit too busy. I'll drop him a line after this show. Everybody else, go and have a fantastic day. I'll see you on the morrow. Till then, have a good day. Thanks for your contribution. As always, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. See you tomorrow.